So what I'm going to say probably isn't going to be that popular, but I'm just going to come out and say it anyway. I think that LeBron James just needs to retire after the end of this season. I don't think he should retire mid-season because I don't think that would really be fair on the team he's playing for at the moment, the Los Angeles Lakers. However, the Lakers season really isn't going to plan because they're 13-11 at the moment, and they're 8th in the Western Conference. Yes, they're in a play-in spot, so they could go into the play-in and still make the playoffs. However, even if they do make the playoffs, and that's a mighty big if considering how this team has been playing and obviously where they are in the Western Conference, they are nowhere near contending, and at best I think that they would probably be a second round exit at this point. I really do not think that they have the team to kind of go on and win an NBA championship, and I don't even think they'd be one of those teams that could go through and make a massive upset. So overall, at least statistically, LeBron is actually having a good season. However, his performances have been quite up and down this season so far. So he's had a few games where he's scored like 35 plus points, and then he's also had a few games where he hasn't even scored 20 points. And I know that this is very circumstantial and the stats don't show everything, but LeBron is usually one of those players who will give you at least 25 a night, 25, 8 and 8, something like that. So I do think that he is starting to slow down a bit, and LeBron obviously is going to know this, and he's going to kind of slow down a bit in some games where he does, obviously the ones where he doesn't get as many points, he's going to rise up in other games where he probably feels that his team needs him more. So overall this season at the moment, LeBron's stats are 23 games played, 35 minutes, 23 points a game, 8 rebounds a game, 9.1 assists a game. He's also shooting 56% from 2-point range, 35.9% from 3-point range, and 76.2% from the free throw line. So really, those are kind of like a roundabout LeBron numbers. So it's kind of looks like a normal season for him, but like I said, he has these games, and I think he went through a 5-6 game stretch where he didn't even score 20 points. I think he scored like 12, 15, 18 points around about those. So I do think that this is kind of showing that LeBron is starting to slow down a bit. I mean, he is like 40 years old as well. However, his running mate, Anthony Davis, is having a much more dominant season, which he hadn't had for the past few seasons. He'd been criticised a lot for kind of stepping back a bit too much, and it seemed like he was a bit too scared to go and be that dominant player that we all know he could be. However, he still has had a couple of games where he does step back a bit and he doesn't dominate as much as he can. So with Anthony Davis, he's also played 23 games. He's averaged 35.3 minutes, 27.5 points per game, 11.2 rebounds, 2 blocks. He shoots 55.7% from the 2-point range, 32% from 3-point range, and 79.8% from the free throw line. So he's literally averaging a double-double every game whilst getting over 25 points a game. So that's the dominance that everyone knew Anthony Davis could put up. He just needs to put that up more or less every game. And I do think that the Lakers could become a nuisance for someone. However, back to LeBron. So I said LeBron should retire, but why? And I think there are a few points that I have for this. The first one is, it's clear that the Lakers are nowhere near the top teams in the NBA. So let's just go over some of their losses to kind of like the top teams in the NBA. So they lost 134-110 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They lost 131-114 to the Memphis Grizzlies. They lost 127-102 to the Denver Nuggets. They lost 101-93 to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they lost 109-80 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I do know that they did also beat the Memphis Grizzlies in another game, but that was just one. I don't think they've beaten any of these other teams, and I know they are playing the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm not sure if they will have played by the time this video goes up, but one of the big things here is when they lose to these top tier teams, they are nowhere near beating them. I mean, a lot of these games are more or less 20-point losses, and if you want to contend, you need to be pushing these teams close. And even if they were pushing these teams close and losing consistently, you still wouldn't call them contenders. So the fact that they're losing to these teams consistently by around 20 points, sometimes even more, that goes to show even more as to why the Lakers just aren't contenders. So really, I do think that this is probably the main point as to why LeBron should retire, because obviously they are nowhere near any of these teams in the NBA, obviously because of how much they are losing to them and how well, it seems like how easily they're being dominated. So like I said, none of these losses are even close, and they aren't consistently challenging the top teams either. So it shows they won't. This really shows they won't be able to advance in the playoffs in a 7-game series if you can't challenge these teams. They might be able to win 1 or maybe 2 games against one of these top teams, but I don't think they'd be able to win any more. And if they did win 1 or 2, they'd probably be quite lucky. And this has been what it's been like for the last few years. They're just an average team, and at best they're a good team, so that's why they keep going out in the first or second round of the playoffs. And overall, I just think that the second point is this team has no chance of winning another championship, because outside of LeBron and AD, nobody on the Lakers really puts up that consistency that they need. Yes, they have a number 1 and a number 2 option that can be very consistent, but they don't have that like third option that a championship team needs that can be very, very consistent and put up very, very consistent performances. So like I said, they don't really have a reliable third option, and it's not like that third option has to play brilliantly all the time. It's just that they need to step up in big games, because usually the superstar players in an NBA team will kind of cancel each other out, and then that's when the role players play a much bigger role, because even though they're not scoring 25-30 points a game, their 10-15 points a game can make a massive difference, especially if superstar players are cancelling each other out. So it's up to them to step up, and the Lakers don't really have that option. They might have it every now and then, but they don't have a consistent option there. And the Lakers really are kind of just a bunch of average athletes who have good games every now and then, and this just ties into the reliable third option point that I just made. These players, yes, they're average athletes, and they only have good games every now and then. Like I said, they aren't consistent. So obviously, if you want to counter this point, you're probably going to say that LeBron James could just move teams. He could force a trade to another team. However, I think you need to look at it a bit like this. Even though it's LeBron James, I don't think a team is going to want to trade for like a 40-year-old player who's obviously not what he used to be, and he's going to be in a decline, and they don't want to give up too much draft capital for him, and the Lakers will want a lot back for LeBron because they'll see him as a very valuable player. So I don't think he really has the option to move team, to be honest, unless a team is really willing to take a massive gamble on him, which I don't think they will. And really my final point is he can't really advance his legacy anymore, and here he hasn't really needed to prove anything for years. It's just in the last several years, well really ever since 2016 when he won that championship with Cleveland, and after he won the championship with the Lakers, he hasn't needed to really prove anything. He's just been adding to his legacy at this point. And alongside this, especially if he stays in LA, he wouldn't be able to add to his ring count. And obviously he's got 4 at the moment, and obviously catching up with Michael Jordan would be the main priority here. But I don't think he's going to be able to do that, obviously, with this Lakers team. So obviously he can't really advance his legacy any more than he already has. Also, he's the all-time point scoring leader, which is a very, very big feat, and he can't advance that anymore. He's also 28th ranked in rebounds, 4th ranked in assists. I think he could go up to 3rd in that, but that isn't really too much of a jump to kind of justify playing for a lot longer. He's also 8th in steals and he's 77th in blocks, so he can't really advance up that much to where compared to like where he is now. So I don't think it's really worth him playing several more seasons to maybe advance up a place or 2 in these rankings. And another big point is he's been consistently great for 2 decades. Most players don't even play a decade in, well, just not just in the NBA, but in a sports league in general. So to be consistently great for more or less 2 decades, it's like, that's an incredible feat in of itself. I mean, most great players don't play for 2 decades, so that feat is just absolutely incredible. So like I said, I don't think he really has anything more to prove, and he can't really advance his legacy more, especially because he can't really win any more championships. So I think it would be best for him to retire, because he's done all he can for his legacy, and I think he may as well retire now, where he's still playing at a brilliant level. He's playing at a very, very high level, and he's 40 as well. I don't think that gets taken into consideration nearly enough as it should. So I think it would be better for him to retire now rather than playing a couple more years and have him completely fall off, because that's kind of what people will remember. People will hold him in higher regard, even though you might disagree with me on this as well. People will hold him in higher regard if he retires now and he's still playing as well as he is now, rather than if he retires in a few years and he's just completely fallen off and he's a complete shell of the player that he used to be. So yeah, that's why really I think LeBron James should retire at the end of this season, whatever happens, because either way I do think he would be going out on some sort of high, considering how well he's been able to keep up this level of play for. So what do you think? Do you think LeBron James should retire? Do you think he should try and force a trade and move team? Or do you think he should just stay on the Lakers and try and maybe rebuild for another championship in another year? Let me know what you think about that down in the comments. If you like the video, leave a like. Also, if you like the video, consider subscribing to the channel. So yeah, thank you for listening, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.